Canada's economic retaliation against U.S. tariffs gains momentum. Tensions between Canada and the United States have eased following a temporary 30-day pause on tariffs. In response, Canadian political parties have shifted focus towards strengthening global trade relationships, particularly with the European Union and Eastern partners. However, on the ground, a different reaction is unfolding among Canadian citizens who have launched grassroots movements against U.S. economic pressure, fueling boycotts and a surge in national pride. The roots of the conflict, trade tensions between the two nations, escalated when former U.S. President Donald Trump, during his second term, imposed aggressive tariff policies on Canadian goods. In addition to economic pressure, Trump made controversial remarks about Canada's economic dependency, even suggesting it should become the 51st state of the United States. His comments, shared via social media and in public speeches, included calling Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Governor Trudeau, to imply Canada was already a subordinate U.S. territory. Trump further justified his tariff threats by citing concerns over immigration and drug trafficking, claiming that Canada was not doing enough to stop the flow of illegal substances and migrants into the U.S. His administration suggested that economic sanctions could force Canada into a closer integration or even annexation by the United States. Canadian backlash and public sentiment. These remarks and tariff threats sparked outrage across Canada. Public opinion polls reveal overwhelming opposition to any notion of merging with the U.S., with around 82% of Canadians rejecting the idea. The backlash was particularly strong among women and older Canadians, demonstrating that resistance to U.S. pressure is deeply rooted in Canada's national identity. Politicians across party lines have strongly condemned Trump's rhetoric. Outgoing Prime Minister Trudeau has emphasized that Canada's sovereignty, natural resources, and democratic institutions are non-negotiable. In response to the tariffs, he warned that they would not only hurt Canadian businesses, but also harm U.S. workers by disrupting deeply integrated supply chains. Former Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland labeled Trump's economic policies as economic warfare, arguing that they were self-destructive and would ultimately raise prices for American consumers. Trudeau, in several speeches, reminded Americans of the long history of U.S.-Canada cooperation, emphasizing that free trade and strong security ties can exist without compromising Canadian independence. Economic retaliation and consumer boycotts. While political leaders addressed the issue diplomatically, Canadian consumers launched their own form of economic resistance. Grassroots movements have encouraged boycotting American goods, canceling U.S. vacations, and prioritizing Canadian-made products. Viral hashtags such as #BoycottUSA and Canada is not for sale have gained traction on social media, urging consumers to avoid American brands. In Ontario, liquor stores removed American alcohol brands from shelves, while across the country, retailers reported a spike in purchases of domestic products. Economic experts suggest that if these boycotts expand to sectors such as electronics and automobiles, they could have lasting economic consequences for U.S. businesses. A particularly significant aspect of this movement has been a shift in Canadian travel behavior. Traditionally, millions of Canadians visit the U.S. annually, spending billions in states like Florida, California, and New York. However, due to the recent tensions, many Canadians are canceling planned vacations to the U.S., opting for domestic travel instead. The U.S. Travel Association estimates that a sustained decline in Canadian tourism could result in a loss of up to $2.1 billion in visitor spending and lead to approximately 14,000 job losses in the American tourism sector. Major Canadian airlines, including WestJet, have reported a 25% drop in demand for U.S.-bound flights, forcing them to re-evaluate flight schedules and routes. Even Canadian schools have taken a stand. Several school districts in Quebec and Manitoba have cancelled educational trips to American cities like New York and Boston, citing economic tensions and the need to send a message of resistance to U.S. policies. Impact on U.S.-Canada trade relations. Despite ongoing political friction, the economic relationship between Canada and the United States remains crucial for both nations. In 2024, the total trade exchange between the two countries reached approximately $1.2 trillion. Canada remains the U.S.'s largest export destination, while the U.S. absorbs about 75% of Canada's exports. The trade relationship spans multiple industries, including energy, manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. Canada is the primary supplier of crude oil, natural gas, and electricity to the U.S., accounting for nearly 44% of total U.S. energy imports. Any disruptions in this trade could lead to fuel shortages and price hikes, potentially increasing U.S. gasoline prices by up to 30%. The automotive sector is another key area of economic interdependence. Over 75% of vehicles manufactured in Canada are exported to the United States, and about 60% of U.S.-made auto parts are shipped to Canadian assembly plants. Trade disruptions, such as tariffs, could drive up production costs and vehicle prices for American consumers. The agricultural industry is also deeply linked. In 2024, U.S. agricultural exports to Canada reached $27 billion, making Canada the top market for American farmers. At the same time, Canada provided the U.S. with $32 billion worth of agricultural goods, including wheat, seafood, and dairy. Any trade barriers in this sector could result in rising food prices and supply shortages for American consumers. The future of U.S.-Canada relations. Although the current tensions have fueled strong reactions, both Canada and the United States remain economically dependent on each other. More than 2 million American jobs are directly tied to trade with Canada, and any prolonged conflict could have significant repercussions on industries, businesses, and consumers in both nations. While Canada's resistance to U.S. tariffs and Trump's annexation rhetoric has strengthened national unity, it remains to be seen whether these consumer-driven boycotts will have a long-term impact on U.S. policies. What is clear, however, is that Canadian citizens and businesses are prepared to push back against economic pressure, reinforcing their country's sovereignty through both political and consumer action. As trade negotiations continue, both nations will need to strike a balance between economic cooperation and national interests. For now, Canada is sending a clear message: it is not for sale.